Okay, I'm doing a comparison and first impression between my new Copper Spur tent on the right from Big Agnes and my older and up to now much beloved Rattlesnake tent from Big Agnes as well. And just want to talk through my first impressions of having set up both and the differences between those experiences and what I see so far, and just my early experiences of the outside of the tent and kind of the general the general lay of the land. So first impressions, of course, as you look at the large end profile of both tents, I was always very happy and impressed with how open and square walled the Rattlesnake was. I felt like it was really made great use of the interior space, and that it was awesome. And I look at the comparison now, and clearly they've improved on that, right? It looks even more square. The sides are even more upright. The space all the way to the end of the tent is much more spacious than the tapering space that we see on the Rattlesnake. So seems like a big improvement there. From the side profile, very similar. There's D-shaped doors. A little bit different execution in that the doors on the Copper Spur have two zippers that terminate at the corner, right? So you can't sort of zip them all the way around. The Rattlesnake has a more of a D-shaped door and the continuous zipper so that you can, decide where you want to have the two zips kind of meet and manage the space accordingly. I think I kind of like the Rattlesnake setup better in that regard, but we'll see as we get further into the tent. The side profiles also very different. If you look at the Rattlesnake, very much tapered toward the end, and something I kind of knew when I ordered the Copper Spur and thought would be an advantage of the Copper Spur is that while you don't spend much time sitting upright at both ends of the tent, it's kind of nice to know that there's just that much more volume in the tent. The Rattlesnake definitely tapers down in that way, and the Copper Spur is more I guess more similar, kind of both ends. There's certainly a higher space on the one end than the other, but the foot end of the tent is definitely give you more headroom. The setup experience was almost identical, but the setup situations are different. The clips are the same. The way I laid out the tent, just didn't even read the instructions on the Copper Spur. I just kind of jumped into it. Laid out the ground cloth, which I've kind of got askew here. Laid out the tent itself, laid the poles on top of it. They're all shock corded, as you would expect. The hubs are different hub setups. There's kind of two hubs on the Rattlesnake because it sort of has two different junctures with legs coming off, with a kind of a center pole setup, and very different setup on the Copper Spur. There's a central hub with four legs descending. The legs were advertised as being curved on the Copper Spur. They are a bit. I thought that would make them very pronounced curve in the bag, and that would be a volume issue. They're almost straight in the bag, although they do have a slight curve, and they tend to, although I was a little worried about that, they tend to sort of just go into the holders and curve out the way they should without a lot of monkeying around with it. The top bar that you connects a little bit differently, so it took me just a second to adjust my setup for that. And the top bar on the that you connect to, or top pole that you connect to on the Copper Spur, is wider than the Rattlesnake, which gives it some of that additional width that I was talking about. So that's my first impression on setting up. Both were terribly easy to set up. I'm impressed with the Copper Spur because first time I had set it up, and it took me about the same amount of time that the Rattlesnake did. So let me pause here, and then I'm gonna explore more of the inside of the tents.